Welcome on into this week's episode of Digging Deeper. I'm Matt Cordy, joined here by a pastor that still does his laundry and mows his lawn.
I sure do.
Yeah. Glad to know that he's still keeping up with those chores, even though he's a big shot keynote speaker. But Pastor Gabe Kasper sitting here with us today.
Yeah.
Second time in a row here, and hopefully we're not getting people tired out there of seeing the same face over and over. But
So sorry, everyone.
you might have left by now anyways.
So true.
Glad to have you all in here, and we're excited to go into this sermon. What good is it to gain the whole world but lose your soul? And I know you even said last week you were excited to get into this one.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited to get into this one.
Yeah.
And I know, right off from the top, I think I've been saying this sermon title wrong a couple times already.
Sure.
Because, you're pulling from a pretty long question, trying to condense it down a little bit, but also me just... for me, every time I hear this one, I keep thinking and singing Toy Mac's hit song, Lose Your Soul.
Legend.
Or Lose My Soul in my head. So,
2008.
Yeah. And that was something I already listened to earlier this morning and just stuck in my head. It's going to be Earworm. And if you don't know what we're talking about, it's probably because you're not a dorky pastor's kid that grew up in the early 2000s.
Like the two of us.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's probably why. But if not, maybe go give it a listen. It's pretty good song.
It's a bop.
Yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
Bop. Yeah.
But obviously, that's just one where he's pulling right from this verse.
Yeah.
And it's obviously a fun song to listen to. But as you opened up your sermon with the anecdote,
Yeah.
I already talked about it a little bit here, but how a couple months ago, actually, you were able to go and be the closing keynote speaker at the Mockingbird Conference.
Yeah.
I don't want to gas you up too much, but I did listen to it and thought it was pretty good.
Well, thanks.
So,
hey, pretty good.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
Congrats on that.
Pretty good. That's good. Thanks, man.
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah, but I do think, as you mentioned, things like that aren't an insufficient home for our souls.
Right. Yeah.
Still going to have to mow the grass, as you could probably hear outside our window right now. But that's
Topical.
okay. And I think I can relate to this a lot as well. I just think different periods of my life, it's always been sort of, what's that next step?
Yeah.
Like, how am I going to, I liked how you explained it, sort of get to that next area of life and breathe.
Yeah.
Even at a more minute level, I think, especially at my old job, it was always the next big event.
Yeah.
Okay, we have to get through this big homecoming game or this big event we're hosting, or get through this season, get to this next benchmark. I want to get this award or something like that. And then I can finally sit down,
Then I'll be
breathe,
okay. Yeah.
and be okay. But there's always something else around the corner. And I think that's at the small level, but also at the bigger level, when you're trying to find a place for your soul, whether it's if I find the right person to settle down with or have kids, do this in life, it's all sort of hollow at the end. It can fill you up, but it's just not going to be somewhere where it's really going to fulfill you, like you were talking about.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's a way in which we just do this as human beings. And again, it's not like accomplishing things at work and achieving certain goals and whatever else in life are really good things. And in fact, it's better to do that than to just sit around and be a bum. That this is a good thing to do. And if I put, the value of my life, my justification for my existence, or if I think that's ultimately going to fulfill me, it just doesn't. And even if I can get it to last for a little bit, typically what I end up doing is, because oftentimes it's actually relationships. A lot of times it's hey, if I could just get a spouse, if I could just get a partner, or if I could just have kids, right? And we see what happens then is people put so much weight on their romantic partner, or so much weight on their kids that it's crushing, actually. That other human beings, the sociologist Ernest Becker calls this apocalyptic romance, where we look to the love partner for redemption. And I think we can extrapolate that to maybe for you, it's not a romantic partner, but maybe it is your kids. And you look to your kids for redemption, or maybe it is your career and you look to your career for redemption. And again, goals are good. Relationships are so important. Good to pursue these things and to do those things that require us to accomplish things in this world. That's a good thing to do. And they're just insufficient homes for your soul. We have to be going from a place of I'm okay no matter what. And only from that place can I then go out and accomplish these things in a way that's actually healthy and doesn't crush me and doesn't crush them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was this one intro you had into this sermon. In your unused notes, you actually had another fully laid out intro.
It's true.
That I had actually been privy to before you had brought it up to me when you came back from this story, actually, just because I like baseball, and I guess you don't know as many people around here that like baseball, I guess or not in the office at least. So
it's true. I mean, that's not why I cut it, but
yeah. Well, yeah. But anyways, if you want to go ahead and just tell us this story.
Yeah. So I do. This is an intro that I had written out, had this plan, was going to go with it, and so here's how it goes. We'll see where the conversation goes from here. And basically, the story I was going to tell is a couple weeks ago, I had a speaking engagement down in St. Louis, and I got to the airport a little early, which I like to do, and I was waiting for my flight out of Detroit, and I'm sitting at the airport bar near my gate. It's during the wild card for Major League Baseball, and so on the TV at the bar was the Boston Red Sox for New York Yankees, and like, I don't know much about baseball. I know that's a pretty big rivalry, is the word on the street. I watched... oh, man, what was that Jimmy Fallon movie? Fever Pitch, him and Drew Barrymore.
Okay.
So I think that's like a 2007 film. Any rates, but I'm sitting there minding my own business. The game's on. I don't really care because I don't follow baseball. This guy sits down next to me at the bar, head to toe Red Sox gear, like totally covered in it. And he turns to me in like thick, like full-blown Mark Wahlberg Boston accents, and he's like, he goes, "You aren't a Yankees fan, are you?"
We don't get to hear the accent?
I know. I was like, that's part of the reason I cut it from the intro, because I'm like, I can't really like, Beans, Boston, Beans are awesome. You aren't a Yankees fan, are you? How is that? That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's
You aren't
pretty good.
a Yankees fan, are you? And I said to him, like, I don't really follow baseball very much. And he looked disappointed when I said that. So I continued, and I said,
do too when you say that.
I'm really sorry, Matt.
That's all right.
I care about football. You got your little Bengals hat on.
Yeah.
Who day?
Who day?
Who day? Not the Steelers.
Not the Steelers.
But I said, hey, man, for as much as I do care about baseball, I said, I have a soul. And so, of course, I hate the Yankees. Now, like, that's a pretty basic pastor joke. Like, that's a line I use a lot, right? Dude, I said that to this guy. He loses it. Like, thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard in his life. I'm not kidding. He started texting all of his buddies. I'm actually now the godfather to his 3 kids. Like, and again, basic pastor joke. Like, I use this all the time. Like, I hate cats because I have a soul. I hate Ohio State because I have a soul. Like, this is a thing. This dude loved it. Now, the point in that intro, like, why would I have told that, is really to get at the nature of like, and so this is why it also was just not quite as good of one for me, at least from where I sat, but to get at the nature of like, man, what does that mean to even have a soul? And like, why do we associate it as an inherently good thing? And then is it even like, why was that such surprising language to this guy that he maybe wasn't even thinking in those terms, right? Like, because we just typically don't. Like, it's so funny that I would use that term, and that's interesting that it's funny I would use that term.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I was talking about the cultural relevancy of,
exactly,
which you talked about a little bit later on.
And anyways, I used later in the sermon. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I love that intro. And I do think that yesterday you even told me that you might have had like up to 6 intros you were sort of kicking around in that brain of yours of what to use. Is that sort of common for your sermons? Yeah,
it's pretty common. I mean, I would say I typically fully write and rewrite probably at least 3. And then prior to that, I've whittled it down from like 6 potential ways. So, I mean, if people want to know, part of the way the sausage gets made, at least for me, I do my textual study. So I want to know the book. I want to know the verses, the text. I know what it's saying very, very well. And actually, after the textual study, I write down what is the goal of this text. And that ends up being my goal for the sermon. Okay, so whatever the goal of the text is, that's the goal for the sermon. Then what I do is I do what I call kind of my cultural exegesis. So you do your biblical exegesis, study the text. Cultural exegesis, like, what are the places where this text intersects with our culture today and with our lives in sort of modern world? Okay, so I do that exegesis as well. From that, I say like, all right, how do I build 3 points out of this text that point ultimately to my only 1 point? I only ever have 1 point actually, and that's my goal. And so how do I build these 3 things towards that goal? Okay, then the very last thing I do before I start writing is I say, how can I introduce this and how can I close this so that I can get to this goal? And so I have my intro, my closer usually figured out before I start writing. And then honestly, everything else kind of fits itself together. But the intro ends up being huge because it just sets my language, sets the terms, and hopefully invites people to care about what I'm going to say next. I mean, that's the language that's always in the back of my head, and I've maybe shared this before. But in an intro, I'm always pretending I'm someone sitting in the congregation saying, why should I care? Why should I care about what you're going to say for the next 20 minutes? So in the first 5 minutes, I'm trying to do a lot of work to get people to care about what's going to happen the next 20 minutes. Yeah. All that say, that means I got to come up with a bunch of different intros that help me get to that. And then I try to pick which of these is the best possible way to get at the rest of the direction for the text.
And along those lines, why did your anecdote about going to Mockingbird, why was that the one that you ended up choosing this time?
Yeah, so a couple reasons. The main one is this, like I don't want to sound like overly, I don't know, flattering of myself, but there's probably 5 other intros that are more fun for me to do because of what I like to do and what I like to read and how I like to think. Mm-hmm. The question I'm asking myself though, again, to go back to that, like is, why would the hearer care? And so I'm trying to find the most universally applicable intro. So if I compare, say, the two that you guys are aware of, my little story of my buddy in Boston Red Sox and the one I actually used, me speaking at this conference. Well, if we look at those two, I'm using this Boston Red Sox story guide. Now, that's a pretty fun story. People are going to be entertained by it. But my literal point on it is like about the nature of the soul and thinking through sort of the history of the nature of the soul and sort of philosophic reasoning behind it is where I would have ended up going with that. And like, I think that's awesome. Dude, most people like, just like, dude, I got to work on Monday. Like, can we like get to something that I care about? Right. So like, that's why I have to cut that. But this one I say, all right, man, I just do think as human beings, a fundamental anthropology we have is there's always this thing where we're like, man, I don't quite have it. I got to do something to get it to satisfy this thing that's inside of me. And so to me, I just felt like it resonated more with where most people are. Yeah. So that's what
I think it did get that point across, and I think it did apply for so many people in that way. So good choice. Man. Good choice.
Thanks. All right. Do my best.
And I know we were joking around yesterday. Maybe future podcasts might be whoops all intros.
Yeah, baby. It's so fun.
So if you want that, let us know. But I don't know. There might be a niche audience out there for that one.
True. That's true. Let us know.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to start heading into more of these unused notes. You have a quote here from T.S. Eliot, who puts things pretty succinctly when he says this: I had far rather walk as I do in daily terror of eternity than feel that this was only a children's game in which all the contestants would get equally worthless prizes in the end.
Yeah. So, people have like their life verse. And I have my confirmation verse, which I guess is the Lutheran version of that. Mm-hmm. If I were to have a life quote, this is it for me. Like, I love this quote. I've only used it one other time in a sermon like 5 years ago, so I thought I could get away with it. Again, this time I probably could have, but I didn't end up using it. But I love what Eliot does. So first of all, I want us to understand like Eliot's context himself. Sure. So he grew up in a he grew up in a Unitarian Universalist home. Okay. Which is like, I mean, to be honest, it's just kind of the most watered down version of religion ever. Like you can kind of tell by the name, right? And so as he grows up, becomes an intellectual. And so he's just like, dude, what is this? Like this sort of hippy dippy stuff. Like, it's just nothing. It's nothing. And so then he goes through and he studies philosophy and he studies religion writ large. He really gets pretty interested in Eastern religions in particular, mysticism in particular, but they just don't land for him. They don't land for him. And he ends up becoming what's called like Anglo-Catholic, which is this sort of merging of Catholicism and Anglicanism, as you can kind of tell by the name. And it's a very sort of high church, very traditional type tradition, which is fine. But he takes his faith really, really seriously. And you can see even in this quote, he's pushing back on sort of the Unitarian Universalism of his youth and what he was brought up in and saying like, dude, like actually it's not a game. And you know what? I kind of want it to not be a game. Like, are you kidding me? Like, because, and this is, what Jesus' teachings in our text for the sermon I just gave, they're actually like pretty hard. Like it's a heavy word actually. And to be honest, as a preacher, I wrestle if I softened it too much, but we can discuss that later if we want. But it is a heavy word. And I think that's right. Like, I think, I did say in my sermon, like, this isn't a game. And I think that's what Eliot gets at here is like, dude, I'm just not playing around. And what a gift that actually is. Because if this is just a game and all it is about like getting comfortable and doing whatever I want, like, what are we doing? Like life doesn't have meaning. Like what's the point? And so like, I want to live in a world where like what I'm doing matters and where eternity matters and our souls are actually at stake. Like it actually costs something. And so I've just always, this quote has always like just embedded itself on my heart.
And I think you see that, I mean, the age old question of like, what is the purpose of life? Like sort of goes back to this, like if there is no purpose, we're sort of just wandering around with no meaning. And I think, like he says here, he'd rather it not be that way.
Yep.
So,
and that's the, sorry to interrupt, but that's the whole, you know, I mean, Camus, his sort of famous myth of Sisyphus, this French existentialist from the 20th century, you know, he's like, you know, Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill, pushes the rock up the hill, it rolls back down. And he says, this is our life. And he's right. But as an existentialist and an atheist existentialist, he says, but we must imagine, we must imagine Sisyphus happy because the rock is his rock. And so he's owning his meaning. He's owning his rock for himself. But dude, I just would say to Camus, a lot hinges on you saying, we must imagine him happy because bro, like, why? Why would he be like what, you know? And so I think that's, and I think Sisyphus would come to the end of himself. And I think Camus, actually, to be honest, he was pretty defiant to the end, which kudos to him on that. But yeah, I say that say like we live in a world that's very, I think, influenced by Camus, whether or not people recognize it, in which it's make your own meaning. And that's enough. That's sufficient. And maybe it is until you lose your job or you get cancer or you lose your house, you know, whatever. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh man, what is this actually about? So, all right. Sorry, had to interrupt. Carry on, my wayward son.
I do think also in your on-news notes, there was a little bit of a different rephrasing of one of the things you were just talking about. You had just talked about when Jesus was addressing this. You even said in here, like, he pulled no punches. Like, this is him saying, deny yourself, take up your cross, follow me. And, I mean, you were even talking to yourself there, like, do you think you softened it too much, as the kids would say? Did you nerf it too much?
Is that, they say nerf it now? I actually don't know that one. I mean, it makes sense.
I mean,
I will ask Titus. He'll tell me. So, well, I mean, here's the deal. The sort of the 5 verses we covered, 24 to 28, literally we could have done just one of them and sat on it for a half hour. And like, it's because they're all so weighty. Every single one of those verses is weighty. So there is a literal pragmatic thing where I'm like, I mean, like, so deny yourself and take up your cross. Like, so just those 2 first points of what Jesus, like Bonhoeffer's book, Discipleship, what he's most well known for. I mean, it's literally just an entire book by the greatest theological mind of the 20th century on essentially just this verse, right? So there's a way in which like I inescapably am going to soften it too much. And like, what do you mean by that? That said, I think like I wish I could have been able to spend some more time on it, but again, because of the way we structured the series, that wasn't the question I was tasked with answering, right? And so I was like, this is just going to lead us into a bigger discussion, right? But all that to say, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to this. Like I think one of the funny things about contemporary American Christianity, and this oftentimes gets picked on too much because there's a lot of very devout people who are great, but one of the things that we all buy into. So I'm not pointing my finger at anyone. We all buy into is like, hey, if God's on my side and Jesus is on my side, it means that like sunshine and roses, right? Like the easiest target on this is your sort of Joel Osteens of the world. Your best life now, you're going to do it. Everything's okay. Kumbaya. Like it's this sort of happy clappy, and it bleeds into our politics. Like we know we're okay if we're in power and we're in control. And it's like, this is not how Jesus talks. Like, and it's not to say we shouldn't expect God to give us this day our daily bread and to provide for us and to experience joy this side of eternity. Of course we want to. And of course, God promises that to us. But he also says, Jesus is very, very clear, like, dude, follow me, like, you're going to suffer. That's part of what it is to follow me. And actually, I sometimes get nervous, like, not that I want to invite suffering on myself or anyone, but I'm like, if you've never suffered for your faith at any level, I'm not entirely sure you're following Jesus. You know, like that is a hard thing to say, but like we should have at some level had someone laugh at us or at some level been pushed outside of our comfort zones, at some level faced some pushback. Otherwise, I'm like, we're maybe not actually doing what we think we're doing. So, and could probably sit on that even more, but I'll let us press on. But yeah, so that's the sort of thing that I think Jesus is saying here that is a challenging thing to hear. Yeah. So
next we have a passage here from C.S. Lewis, and he's illustrating sort of that first part, denying yourself, losing yourself. Once again, Eminem finding his way into the sermon. But he sort of says the only way to find yourself is in Christ. If you want to sort of just talk about this quote.
Yeah, well, what I love about Lewis is so good at a lot. I mean, there's a reason he's quoted forever by every pastor from everywhere. One, he's super accessible, but two, man, he has this uncanny way of tapping into universal truths in a way that he just sees them better than anyone else. So this idea of finding yourself by losing yourself, he's like, dude, this is not just true in terms of like your soul as it relates to Jesus. This is a principle of life.
Yeah.
Right. And so he goes through it and he says like, well, I'll do one that he doesn't do. Like a tree doesn't grow unless a seed falls to the ground and dies. Right. So unless the seed dies in the ground, new life will never sprout up from it. And so like, that's just a principle of life. And so he goes on and says, in your social life, you'll never make a good impression on other people until you stop thinking about what sort of impression you're making. In literature and art, no man who bothers about originality will ever be original. Whereas if you simply try to tell the truth without caring 2 pence how often it has been told, you will 9 times out of 10 become original without having ever noticed it. This principle runs through all of life from top to bottom. And I think that's just true, that it's like the tighter I hold on to something, the harder. I mean, it's honestly, it's the same thing with happiness, right? If I aim for happiness, I've talked about this before, but if I aim for happiness, I do not get it. But if I give up the pursuit of happiness and instead pursue truth or pursue meaning or pursue something bigger than happiness, then I actually find happiness gets thrown in, right? Like this is, it's just a principle. Like this paradox is true no matter what. And so then Lewis goes on and he says, give up yourself and you will find your real self. Lose your life, you will save it. Nothing that you have not given away will be really yours. Nothing that you have not given away will be really yours. Nothing in you that has not died will ever be raised from the dead. Look for yourself and you will find in the long run only hatred, loneliness, despair, rage, ruin, and decay. But look for Christ and you will find him. And with him, everything else thrown in. It's just like, it's good and it's true. I'll probably have to use this in a sermon later. I was just meeting with a mentor of mine and he's just like, he was very gracious about it, but he's essentially calling me out on like my devotional life of like, dude, you're coming in too hot, you're coming in too arrogant. Like God owes you something. And he's like, what? And I know you're not supposed to do that, like I know that. But he's like, no, man, like, he referenced the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. And he's like, dude, you're Lazarus. There's a reason we say in our confession, I, a poor, miserable sinner. He's like, poor is actually drawn from that text. Like, that's why we have it in there, is like, we're not bringing anything, man. And we actually each day start there, which again, so I'm like, well, what about my self-esteem? And like, dude, like, yeah, you're still made in the image of God and he loves you and stuff. But like, we actually have to come humbly. And like, there's a lot to that. Like, and it's only in doing that we become lifted up and that we live into who we fully are in Christ. So,
yeah, and that's a great paradox. And we talked about this in the sermon some too. But in here, you even referenced that one theologian calls this the doxological dispossession. Can you talk about that tongue twister? Yeah,
it's a pretty fun one. Doxological dispossession. I could be wrong. Someone can check me on this. I believe it's Michael Horton is the theologian who says that. So doxological. So I did talk about how we have this idea, and I didn't lean on this term as much, which is why I didn't end up using this quote. When I describe sort of modern conceptions of the self or of the soul, but we really try to possess ourselves, possess the soul, possess who we are. And in this text, Jesus is inviting us and commanding us indeed to be dispossessed selves. Right. Now, that sounds like scary and whatever. And that's where Horton, I think, brilliantly adds this doxological dispossession. So it's not that I'm like losing myself or dying to myself in this sort of like self-flagellating, rolling around on the ground, what a worthless piece of junk I am. It's I'm actually losing myself, doxological. So in worship, right? Worship. In worship, in awe of the one who is greater than me, in awe of the one who is worthy of praise. And so it's this shift from a self-possessed, self-focused to a God-possessed, God-focused. So that's the doxological dispossession.
Yeah. You had a piece in the sermon talking about how often our souls have become commodified,
Yeah.
especially in our culture today. And you had this quote from Claire Ashcraft where she talked about how social media just amplifies this to the nth degree. And there's actually more to this quote that didn't make it into the sermon, which I'll run through right here. She says, how does someone create their own meaning when they can hardly leave their bed? And why would anyone leave their bed when the action one takes limits their future, which the internet convinced us is unlimited and infinite?
Yeah. Honestly, looking at that, I'm like, I wish I would have used the rest of that quote, especially because the language of limits I end up using later, right?
Right.
Would have been really good. Oh, a better preacher. If only I was. But yeah, I mean, so Claire is this, there's like this emerging group of like Gen Z Substack writers. So Claire Ashcraft's one of them. Freya India, I've referenced her before. She's like brilliant. Who are like, man, taking a scalpel to what tech has done to their generation. So I'm very grateful for people like her who I think are very, very thoughtful. Any rate, and Ashcraft, not a Christian, atheist, quote, deeply influenced by Buddhism, which like, I've met that person. They're not that interesting. At any rate, sorry, God loves you. Okay, but get it together. Okay, so any rate, but what I find interesting about the way, the part I didn't use, how does someone create their own meaning when they can hardly leave their bed? Okay, so one, this gets to the fact that like there's a way in which internet social media paralyzes us, right? So that's the earlier part of the quote of like, dude, we have so much knowledge. We have more knowledge now than any people ever existed. And of course, then the like often thing you tag to that, though, is we have so much knowledge, we seem to be lacking in wisdom. And that's absolutely, I think, true. And that's the thing then is we get overwhelmed by this knowledge of the world and it paralyzes us. And
literally just doom scrolling.
It's constant doom scrolling. Yeah, exactly. And it like, I mean, does things to us biologically that paralyze us, but it also does something to our soul, I think, that paralyzes us as well. And so then she adds to this, like, dude, so how can I make meaning when I can't leave my bed? If I'm stuck on like the dopamine fix, I'm stuck addicted to the doom scroll, I'm stuck on this sort of thing. What sort of meaning am I going to make? Everything's being fed to me constantly. And then I'm told to make my own meaning. I can't possibly do that, especially when like any action I take, there's a limit to it. And well, but then what if it's the wrong one? Then what if it's the wrong? And that's, I mean, it becomes this paralyzing thing for life. And so that's where I think like we need to, this goes back to actually maybe the beginning of the sermon of like, well, I think maybe that ran through the sermon of like, dude, we have to have a house for our soul. We have to have a place that we come to where we're seen and known, but a house is also a place we launch from, right? And so it's got to be both of those things. It's a place where I'm known and loved and embraced, and a place that I launch out into the world. And so if I don't have that in the right place, I end up, I think, paralyzed at a certain level in some places. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And you also have a note in here that didn't end up getting into the sermon, but just how you weep for those that walk away from the faith.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think you see this probably a lot more than most just in the role that you occupy as a pastor. But if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, so this was originally in the sermon going to be when it talked about like, hey, like, was it profit a person to gain the whole world, lose their soul? Like, this is not a game. Like that. Like this matters. Da, da, da.
It's sort of like the message your dad told you as well.
Indeed.
Like,
yeah, exactly. Like, yeah. And so, and I've talked about this in other sermons of like the hands down hardest part of being a pastor is when people leave the faith. Like and even if it's like people I don't actually know that well, but like are adjacently connected to the church, whatever, or, parents of adult children where their kids are out. And it's, and I didn't end up including it because it's like, because again, I've used it before and it's like, it's such a heavy thing to kind of bring up as an example and then just walk away from, right? So it's like, unless I can do the work around it, I don't want to just bring it up, but you bring it up now. So, I think it's like, I think sometimes people hear me maybe say something like, I feel the weight of that, or I feel, I weep with parents about this when their adult kids leave, et cetera. And they think it's like a sort of like, oh, well, you just want to control people, or you just want people to believe what you want them to believe, or like, why can't you just kind of let people be free and da 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 da? Or you're like, and I'm like, dude, it's it's like I actually think Jesus is that good, and I actually think knowing him and like following after him and being in relationship, like I think it's actually what human beings are made for. And so like I really actually believe that. And so when people just like bail on it, and to be honest, 90% of the time it's for stupid reasons. I'm just going to say it, like 10%, it's like, I get it. 90%, I'm like, dude, why? Like you're worth more than that. And you're settling for some like noise you heard on the internet. Like it's just insane to me. And so it just like, it breaks my heart because I think you're missing out on who you're meant to be. You're missing out on the place your soul might actually find rest in this world. And you're choosing a lie that, I mean, in one sense, ultimately is condemning. And in the short term, at the very least, is not what's best for you. And so it's just heartbreaking. Yeah.
Yeah. Not a light topic. And even when I was reading through these notes, it's like, should I bring this up or not? And but no, I think it's healthy to talk about though. And especially in a context like this. And I do think, I mean, if we do believe that there is this importance behind it, like this is heavy stuff, and it's something that like it is sorrowful when we see it happen.
It is. And I mean, and I think like Jesus says this, right? Like this is the text. Like we're just doing what Jesus is saying. And I'm like, we need to take him seriously and take his warning seriously.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but like, man, I trust like he is truth personified. Right. And so, man, I want to lean into that truth and trust that he meets us there, even when it's heavy. And I think maybe I'll put it this way too. I think sometimes, obviously like I think a like pretty fun guy, like a mushroom. But a playful dude. And even in my preaching, I can be sort of like playful and, reference Eminem and K-pop Demon Hunters for the three of you that got that. But
I did have to Google that one.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
It's a great song, man. Up, as I'm up. Okay. But, but the point being, like for fun that I like to have in communicating the gospel, and there's a method to that madness. I think it isn't a game, it really like real souls are at stake here. It really does matter. And I believe that because that's what Jesus says. And I believe in Jesus. Yeah.
And, I think we're going to sort of finish where you finished in the sermon, where you talked about the story of Yuichi Fujiyama, and he's that pastor.
Job, man.
Yeah, and he's the pastor in Japan who, I mean, you sort of walk through where he gets these calls from people that are considering taking their own lives at these cliffs in Japan. And I think it's very powerful and just a great image of just like him running to go to these people just the same way God does. But I mean, I loved it, so I actually went and dug a little bit more for digging deeper and looked up some more about this guy. I was trying to find the documentary. All I found was a trailer fully in Japanese. Still watched it, but didn't understand a word. Tragic. That's okay. But anyways, at the end of one of the articles I was reading about this, it was talking about one of those people he had saved, and it's someone that like they still house. They have these dormitories where these people can live there and attend the church and everything. But even though he was saved, like he didn't just like flip a switch and automatically fold into Christianity, which understandable. But it sort of talked about how he would sit and just be in worship and hear the words. And eventually he became baptized. Now he's like this member in the choir and everything.
Love it.
And he had this quote at the end. He said, his name was, let me find it here, Shimohira. And he said, I started bringing my pain not to myself, not to others, but to God. And I thought that fit in actually pretty well with where we were talking about where do we house our souls. And along with that, like, where is that pain going? And we're not going to be able to rescue ourselves. It's God who's coming to rescue us on that cliff.
That's it, man. That's so good. No, I think you're right. And I think even that, story of like, dude, he gets rescued, but it isn't like by Fujiyamu and Fujiyabu rather. But it's like he gets rescued, But it isn't like, oh, and now I'm a Christian, right? It's like, okay, he gets brought into this community and he's there, and they continue to love him and they continue to care for him. And it's like that process of realizing, okay, I've lost myself. I've been rescued by this other. I've been brought into this community of love. And then in time, that's when it starts to it starts to click, right? And I start to realize, man, like actually all of life I can actually take to God. All of life, I don't have to just hold on to this pain. I don't have to just hold on to this hurt. I can actually release that to God, and he is actually there, and he is actually listening, and he is actually walking with me. But like that actually takes learning. Like I think we, as people who've been in church a long time, maybe think like, well, yeah, of course, but it's like, one, actually for us to experience that, to lean into that at a pretty deep level. I mean, I'm still figuring that out. But two, for someone like Shimohira, like, dude, like he's just learning how do I do that. That's big. It's big. That's cool, man. I'm glad you dug in more to it.
Yeah. And that's where we're going to leave you here. For this section of the podcast, we'll have Amy and Nate coming up on the other side of this. But coming up ahead is the closing of this sermon series. This is where we all started, was the questions Jesus asked. And we have one more left in this series. It's going to be, has no one condemned you? It's looking at John chapter 8, starting at verse 1, going through 11. One of my favorite passages of the Bible, so I'm quite excited about going through this one. So make sure you come around next week to hear Has No One Condemned You?
It's going to be a good one.
Hi, everyone. We're so glad to be here today to talk to you more about this past weekend's sermon and how the music that we sang really, really fit. And once again, it was kind of this moment where you just didn't realize how much it fit. And so like you had talked a little bit about a specific area of the sermon that meant something to you.
Yeah. Well, we were singing His Glory My Good. There was a particular part that was just really powerful in the service, and it was resonating with the part in the sermon where it's the passage about he who would save his life will lose it, and he who will lose his life for my sake will save it. Yeah. And we were just talking about how that sounds kind of like enigmatic,
contradictory.
Like just being paradoxical for the sake of it. But what Gabe kind of explained that what I thought was just really powerful and really helpful was that deciding, the word decide is to cut, and like to say this, not that.
It's like a death.
Yeah.
He talked about each of those things being a death. Yeah,
the potential for the future. So I decide to go to school here. Well, it's a death of any other options that I was considering, and whatever. So when we decide to follow Christ, it's the death of, kind of a image we have in our mind of us, being rich and famous, or being a rock star, or being just anything else that we might, James Bond, like whatever you want, whatever image you have of yourself, that you die to that. And I just thought that was amazing and really
powerful.
Yeah, and just clarified that really strange, kind of a really strange passage. And then the song is just hit the nail on the head with that.
Yeah. No, I think about like especially students that are in college right now, where they're kind of having to make decisions about what they're going to do.
Yeah, scary.
And they're super scared because they're thinking about all the deaths that they're going to have to encounter. And so I love the idea of thinking about just the glory of the Lord and not thinking about what your own glory. And if you can change that paradigm, like how much that would help you to make those decisions with less fear.
Yeah, the trust really is necessary too, because they are big decisions. That's what I mean. It's like
they really are.
You can't tell people it's not a big decision.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, but trusting and all these things happen for His glory and our good. Like we know that trusting in God is not just like it's always our good, even when it means dying, which is
crazy.
Yeah, hard to conceive, but it's true.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
Yeah. We're going to play this song for you now.
Would I gladly be made nothing, that Christ would be made more? Would I seek the only kingdom that far outweighs them all. I will stand before my Father, where the faithful saints have stood, and with joy my heart shall praise him for his glory and my good. And with joy my heart shall praise him for his glory and my good. To our God be the glory, to our God be praised, he alone, the name above all names. I will boast ever only in the Lord my God, for I know his glory is my good. Yes, I know his glory is my good. Oh, I just love that.
Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, Amy and Nate, for playing His Glory and My Good. It's always so nice to hear from you guys, and I do agree that really did apply pretty well with this past week's sermon, and just beautiful to hear God working in those different ways. And I like how you guys talked about, too, all those decisions we have to make in life and how it's a death of possibilities like we talked about in the sermon. Thought that really wove in quite nicely as well. So that's it for this week's episode of Digging Deeper. Coming up ahead next week is going to be closing out the sermon series that we're in currently, and it's going to end on a good one, I think. It's going to be looking at chapter 8 from John, starting there at the beginning, verses 1 through 11, and it's going to be Has No One Condemned You? I'm really looking forward to this one, so we're excited to have you guys come back next week for Has No One Condemned You? Thanks for listening, and God bless.